There is no period in life with no development, neither physically nor mentally. Biologically, as we know, the first factor contributing to determine our sexuality is represented by genetics. Chromosomes depend on biological parents and represent the biological inheritance on which new life is built. Most common chromosome combinations are XX for girls and XY for boys, but there are also less common combinations that are compatible with a good life. As you can see, starting from the first biological factor that determines sexuality, the situation is not as simple and binary as we are used to think. Diversities and complexities are here and there and everywhere, and should not be offered terms like aberration, disorders, but it should be referred to them as DSD, so diversity of sexual development. The normal human fetus, regardless of sex chromosomes, has the potential to develop either male or female organs, depending on genetic and hormonal influence in a very complex interplay where uncommon roots regularly appear and results in different forms of intersexuality. The most common roots and gestation weeks are depicted in the figure. Until the ninth week, the genital organs are undifferentiated, so it's not possible to establish the biological sex organ of the unborn child by observation, for example with ultrasounds. It is only from the 12th week of gestation onwards that the organs begin to differentiate based on hormones, genes, and other biological factors. Something unexpected can happen in gestational development. Sometimes the urethral opening on the penis is not at the tip, causing the so-called hypospadias condition. This is not uncommon, but maybe this may disturb the child in the relationship with his genitals, for example, in the locker rooms or at the toilet. The thing can clearly be said when the external genitalia appear as a mixture of female and male, or there is no vagina even though the external genitalia are female-looking. So these are called intersex conditions. While sex organs in general are fully organized at the time of birth, the brain, also those parts that we could say are gendered, continue to develop for more than 2 decades after birth. The sexual identity development is not guided by the same means through the same channels as does the genitals. Hence, the brain can develop incongruently from genitals. Let's try to understand something more about sexual identity. So first of all, sexual expression or identity is about how you see and express yourself sexually, and it is composed by some subdomains. Biological, or more precisely reproductive sex, is described by the combination of our biological facets, from chromosomes to genitals. The most common biological expressions are considered as female or male sex. But as we also have mentioned, there are many possible biological expressions outside this binary. The gender identity is the one's innermost concept of self as a male, female, a blend of both, or neither gender. Practically, it refers on how individuals perceive themselves and what they call themselves. One's gender identity can be the same or different from their sex assigned at birth. The gender expression refers to gender roles, which are the adherence to social role encompassing a range of behaviors, clothes, and attitudes that are generally considered acceptable, appropriate, or desirable for a person based on their biological sex. Gender roles are usually centered on conception of masculinity and femininity, although there are exceptions and variations among cultures. Um, at least sexual orientation is an inherited, enduring emotional, romantic, and or sexual attraction to other people. Children with uncommon bodies, genitals, and sexual identities are more vulnerable for mocking, harassment, and abuse. This happens both because adults perceive them as more fragile and easily manipulated, and because these children may need more reassurance, physical contact, and recognition by the adults of reference. The sense of shame and diversity are among the emotions most present in these cases. And it should be noted that shame is a mediator of depression and anxiety in later life. Almost all children will explore their own bodies, like looking at, touching, and also stimulating their genitals, especially at times when they are not wearing a diaper. That is normal and healthy and should not be hindered. This is also the case when children masturbate. It is not uncommon to see children rubbing their genitals against surfaces or various types simply because it causes them pleasure, just like for most of us. The art of guidance is to find ways to affirm bodily pleasure, at the same time guide the child not to openly masturbate in public, suggesting that there is a suitable time and space for certain activities. As the body grows 4 or 5 years old, children's exploration of their own body become more focused to genitals. It is also perfectly normal for children to engage in sexual or erotic play with each other, like daughter play, mother and father play, sometimes including copulation mimicry. By itself, the presence of these games is not necessarily a sign of violence or early exposure to sexuality, especially if it is not accompanied by emotional distress, but only by curiosity. So, to conclude this unit, it is important to find creative ways to share messages to children in order to promote their healthy psychophysiological development, not limited to sexual health. For example, an appreciation of their own body to reach through a positive body image and self-image. This is extremely important since it has an effect to the development of the self-esteem. An appreciation for the sense of well-being, closeness and trust created by body experience and bonding with others. Respect for the others, the differences and the equality, also referring to gender equality. And a positive personal sexual identity.